I've lived long enough to know when something is wrong before I can explain why. At 72, my knees may creak, my hearing may miss a note or two, but when that inner alarm rings, I listen. Henry and I were driving home from the city that afternoon, the kind of slow, golden drive where time stretches like honey on a spoon. He hummed an old tune, the tires whispered against the highway, and for a moment life felt ordinary. Then I shifted in my seat, glanced over my shoulder, and saw it, a sliver of worn brown leather wedged beneath the grocery bags in the trunk, Nathan's old satchel. That one glimpse tightened every muscle in my chest. It wasn't fear exactly. It was instinct, that quiet voice that says, "Stop now before it's too late." "Henry," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. "Pull over." He shot me a quick look. "You feeling sick?" "Just stop, please." Something in my tone told him not to argue. He eased the car onto the gravel shoulder. The hazard lights began their steady tick-tick, and the world outside went still, except for the hum of the engine. I unbuckled, twisted awkwardly, and reached back. My fingers hooked the strap, pulled the satchel up and over the seat. It hit my knees with a weight that didn't belong. "Edward, what on earth?" Henry started. I didn't answer. That bag had been a gift from me to my son on the day he'd started his first real job. Strong leather, solid stitching. Back then, I'd told him a man should choose something built to last, something that carries its years with dignity. He'd laughed and promised he would. Promises age when they aren't kept. I opened the flap. Inside were receipts, a folded sweatshirt, a small mirror, nothing alarming, until my knuckles brushed a hard rectangle. A phone. Not his regular one, cheap, plain. The kind people buy with cash and no questions asked. Before I tell you what happened next, do me one favor. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell me where you're listening from. Because what I'm about to share might sound like a movie, but every word of it is true. I pressed the power button. The screen blinked awake. No wallpaper, no password. Just a list of recent messages stacked one after another. The first line read, "They passed the bridge at 4:12. Don't text again." Another followed. Understood. Then mechanic says it's gradual. No trace. And the last one, "Are you sure?" "He's my father." I stared at the words until the letters blurred. A cold numbness started at the base of my neck and moved down through my chest. Henry must have seen my face. "What is it?" I couldn't answer. I just looked at him and then down at the phone again. Nathan, my son. The boy who used to race down the hallway in socks and call me coach because I'd never missed one of his games. My fingers trembled once, then stopped. There was no space left for shaking. "Start the car," I said quietly. "Where are we going?" "Anywhere but forward." He didn't ask why. He just turned the wheel, easing us back toward the city. The sun dipped behind a cloud, dimming the road into a dull strip of steel. I looked down at the phone resting in my lap, that little slab of plastic holding the truth no father should ever see. I thought of the curve ahead on mile 47, the one with the broken guardrail and the flowers tied to the post. And for the first time in my life, I understood how silence can be louder than any scream. Because the road ahead wasn't just dangerous. It was planned, and my son, my own flesh and blood, was part of the plan. The road unwound behind us in long silver threads as Henry turned us back toward the city. I sat with the burner phone balanced on my knees, the hum of the engine covering the smaller hum of my heartbeat. I scrolled slowly, afraid of what waited below. Each message was a pin pulled from a grenade I'd already dropped in my lap. "Everything will look like a brake failure. No trace. After the curve. Fire takes care of the rest." They read like instructions. Written by strangers who happened to know the curve near our hometown, the same curve Nathan used to call Dad's Cliff, because I once pulled over there to show him hawks nesting in the rocks. Now it was listed as a kill zone. I felt Henry watching me. "You gonna tell me what's going on?" he asked. I handed him the phone without a word. He read in silence, lips moving just enough for me to see when he reached the line that said, "He's my father." His knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. "Good Lord, Ed. I told you to stop for a reason," I said. "He planned it. Or she did, and he let her. For a mile, neither of us spoke. The only sound was gravel crackling under the tires when we changed lanes. Henry finally whispered, "We should call the police right now." "Not yet," I said. "If we call now, they'll deny it. Wipe everything. We'll be the crazy old men who misread a phone." I opened the next message. "Payment confirmed. Mechanic handled the fluid. Corrosion sets in within 40 miles. The brakes." My stomach turned. I could almost feel them softening under my foot, even though we weren't in the sabotage car anymore. "Nathan came to the hotel yesterday," I murmured. "Said he'd help load the groceries." "That's when he did it." Henry exhaled hard through his nose. "You think Clara talked him into it?" "I think she talks and he obeys." I scrolled again and found a voice memo icon. "Curiosity overrode dread." I tapped it. A woman's voice, Clara's, low, certain, filled the car. "The debts are too deep. The old man's worth 2 million alive, more dead." "It's math, Nathan. Nothing personal." Henry swore under his breath. I stopped the playback. We drove in silence until the next exit. I needed ground that didn't move. A diner sign glowed ahead, its neon coffee cup flickering like it couldn't decide whether to stay lit. I told Henry to pull in. Inside, the smell of burnt toast and grease wrapped around us. I slid into a booth and laid the phone on the table between the salt and the sugar shaker. I read the messages again, slower this time, letting every word carve its place in memory. Evidence doesn't last unless you memorize it. Henry stirred his coffee so hard the spoon rattled. "You think he really meant to—" "He meant it enough to text about it," I cut in. "He meant it enough to take her word over mine." My voice sounded steady, but there was a tremor underneath. The kind that comes when you realize the story of your family has a missing chapter you'll never get back. Henry leaned forward. "So what now?" I looked at him, the answer already forming like steel cooling in my chest. "We go back to that auto shop near the bridge, Sam Reed's place." He's honest. "If there's something in those brakes, he'll find it. You're gonna face this head-on, aren't you?" "I'm a teacher, Henry. I've faced worse lies than this in essays." I forced a thin smile. "But this one needs proof." When we stepped outside again, the sun had dropped low enough to paint the diner windows red. I pocketed the phone carefully, as if it were a living thing. The air smelled of rain and gasoline, a bad omen, or maybe a warning. Henry started the car. "If we die doing this, we won't," I said. "Because we already didn't." He looked at me like he didn't understand, but he drove anyway. I stared out the window, replaying every message in my head until the pattern became clear. Timestamps, coordinates, distance to the curve. Whoever had helped them knew cars, roads, accidents. This wasn't impulse. It was architecture. The first fat raindrops hit the windshield as we turned down the narrow road towards Sam Reed's garage. The wipers squeaked across the glass, the sound strangely like a heartbeat speeding up. By the time the neon open sign came into view, I had made a decision that would change the rest of my life. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was a witness, a survivor, and, God help me, a hunter. And hunters don't call the police first. They gather proof. When you've raised a child, you memorize his face in pieces, his crooked grin, the little scar on his chin, the way he folds his arms when he's lying. That's why, as Sam Reed lifted the hood and leaned into the engine bay, I could already see Nathan's hands in the crime. Sam worked in silence for a while, flashlight beam moving across metal like a scalpel. The rain outside ticked against the tin roof. Henry stood behind me, arms crossed tight. After a few minutes, Sam said, "You weren't wrong to bring it in." He straightened, holding a clear hose between his fingers. The inside was pitted, cloudy, half-dissolved. Someone added a chemical to the brake fluid. It eats from the inside out. You'd drive fine for a while, then you'd press the pedal and nothing would happen. Henry muttered something that sounded like a prayer. Sam dropped the hose into a tray. Another 10, maybe 15 miles before total failure. Any guess where that puts you? "Mile 47, I said. Sam blinked. "That bad curve?" I nodded once. He exhaled slowly. "Edward, this isn't an accident. You need to go straight to the cops." "Not yet," I said again. My own voice surprised me. Calm, cold, exact. I need him to believe it worked. If he thinks I'm dead, he'll talk freely. He'll make mistakes. Henry grabbed my arm. That's madness. He already tried to kill you. He failed, I said. Now I need to understand why. The truth is, I wasn't thinking only about justice. I was trying to fill in the missing pieces. When did love turn into greed? How long had Clara been whispering in his ear? What did she promise that outweighed a father's life? I thanked Sam, asked him to document everything, photos, samples, a written report. He didn't like it, but he agreed. When we left, the rain had stopped. Steam rose from the pavement like ghosts leaving the earth. Back in the car, Henry started to speak, but I cut him off. Let me think out loud. He nodded and drove. Nathan's in debt, 300, maybe 400,000. The text said loan sharks. That means fear, not stupidity. I tapped my temple. Clara used that fear. She's done this before. What makes you think that? There's a line in the messages. It worked before. She said it like someone describing a recipe. Not a first try. Henry's hands tightened on the wheel. You think she's killed before? I think she practiced. We hit a stretch of wet road where the tires hissed softly. My reflection in the window looked older than I remembered. Not sad, not angry, something else. Hollowed out, like the part that used to be trust had been scooped clean. You gonna tell him you found the phone? Henry asked. Tomorrow, I said. I'll call, sound casual. I'll let him sweat, see how fast he lies. He nodded slowly. You're turning this into a lesson. Maybe I am. But this time he's the student. By the time we reached home, night had thickened. I sat in the parked car a long moment, holding the phone in both hands. The screen was dark, but I could feel its heat, faint and alive. I thought about all the times I'd given Nathan second chances, school fights, bad grades, broken promises. I'd always said, you can fix a mistake if you face it. Now I understood that some mistakes come looking for you. Smiling, carrying your groceries. I looked at Henry. He planned every detail, but he forgot one thing. What's that? That the man he tried to kill taught him how to think. The clock on the dashboard clicked over to midnight. I slid the phone into my pocket, shut the door, and felt the rain-soaked air hit my face. The old me died somewhere on that highway. The man who walked up the driveway was someone else entirely, someone who knew the difference between fear and strategy. Tomorrow, I'd call my son. But tonight, I needed to practice sounding like a man who still trusted him. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house sounded like a whisper from the highway, like the curve itself calling my name. At dawn, I was already in the garage, staring at the car that had almost become my coffin. Henry joined me, bleary-eyed, clutching 2 mugs of coffee. You really going to drive that thing again? He asked. I have to, I said. If Sam's right, the brakes haven't failed yet. But they will, and I want to know how close we came. He shook his head, muttering, You've lost it, but handed me the keys anyway. The air outside was cool, heavy with the dampness of last night's rain. The kind of morning that fools you into thinking life is calm again. I started the engine. It purred like always. No warning lights. No sign of betrayal. Henry stood by the open garage door, arms crossed. You sure about this? I gave a slow nod. Stay clear. If anything happens, you call Sam, and then the police. I eased the car out onto the quiet stretch of road behind my house. No traffic, just the hum of tires over asphalt and the occasional chirp of birds starting their day. I pressed the brake once. Smooth. Again, solid. A third time, and I felt it, the faintest give, like a heartbeat skipping. My throat tightened. I pressed again. The pedal sank a fraction lower. Not enough for panic, enough for truth. Sam was right. If we had driven even 10 more miles yesterday, that soft sinking would have become free fall. I pulled back into the driveway and shut off the engine. Henry came running, eyes wide. Well? They're dying, I said simply. Just slower than planned. He leaned against the fender, his breath coming hard. God Almighty, I nodded. That's what they counted on. No warning light, no noise, just failure at exactly the right moment. He looked at me like a man seeing someone he used to know but couldn't quite place anymore. What now? I took out the burner phone, still wrapped in the silk handkerchief Nathan had used to hide it. Now, I said, we use their confidence against them. I dialed my son's number on my personal phone. He answered on the second ring, cheerful, rehearsed. "Hey, Dad, everything okay?" I forced a smile he couldn't see. "Fine, son. We just found your old bag in the trunk. Must have slipped your mind." There was a pause, not long but long enough. "Oh, yeah, the bag. Don't worry about it. I'll come get it tomorrow." I could almost hear the panic under his calm. "Sure," I said. "Take your time. We're just glad it's safe." Another pause. "Drive carefully, Dad. You know that curve near mile 47 can be tricky." My stomach turned. He was still following the script. "I know," I said softly. "I'll be careful." When I hung up, Henry stared at me. He sounded nervous. "He's terrified," I said. "Which means he doesn't know we're still alive in more ways than one." I slipped the phone into my pocket and looked out at the morning sky. The sun was climbing, warm and golden. A good day for truth. A bad day for my son. By mid-morning, we were back at Sam Reed's garage, the air already thick with motor oil and truth. Sam had promised to finish his inspection early, and as soon as he saw our car pulling up, he wiped his hands on a rag and waved us in. "Edward," he said, "I didn't sleep much thinking about what I found yesterday." He pointed to a tray under the lift, where a thin stream of dark fluid shimmered like poison. "I ran the sample through a quick chemical test. There's a corrosive additive, something I've only seen once before in a fraud case. Each through the brake line from inside. Ingenious in a devil's way." Henry's breath caught. "So it's proven?" Sam nodded grimly. "I'll stake my reputation on it. 10 more miles, and the system would have blown. You'd have gone off that cliff with no control." He said it like a doctor delivering a death sentence. "You'd already escaped." I stared at the car. My car. My faithful companion for 10 years, and felt nothing but cold detachment. "This isn't a vehicle anymore," I said. "It's evidence," Sam frowned. "You planning to call the police now?" "Soon," I told him. "But first I want every inch of this documented. Photos, samples, written report. Time-stamped and sealed." He hesitated. "You're building a case." "I'm building a confession," I corrected. "But to get that, I need them to think they won." Henry gave a low whistle. "You're not just angry, you're planning." I didn't answer. I just watched Sam slide under the car again, flashlight beam flicking like a heartbeat. Every sound, the click of the wrench, the hiss of air, felt like punctuation in a story I never wanted to read, but couldn't stop writing. When Sam emerged, he carried a small transparent tube filled with cloudy fluid. "Here," he said, sealing it with tape. "Sample of the contaminated line. Date and time marked. If you go to the police, this'll help." I took it gently, as if it were something sacred. "Thank you, Sam," he rubbed the back of his neck. "Edward, you realize your son might have paid someone to do this? People like that don't stop because you survive." "I know," I said quietly. "That's why I won't survive, not yet." Both men looked at me. I let the silence stretch until it carried meaning. "If Nathan believes I'm dead," I continued, "he'll relax. He'll message her again. They'll celebrate, make mistakes. And when they do, I'll be listening." Sam wiped his hands again, slower this time. "That's dangerous thinking." "I'm done being safe." Henry stepped closer. "You're talking about faking your death." I met his eyes. "No, I'm talking about faking his success." Sam's brows furrowed. "You'd need help for that. Maybe from your lawyer." "I already have someone in mind." I slipped the sample into my jacket pocket and looked back at the car one last time. It looked perfectly normal, as if it hadn't been turned into a weapon by my own son. That's the thing about Betrayal. It doesn't look like a monster. It looks like something you trust. We thanked Sam and left. As we pulled out, the wind picked up, carrying the sharp scent of oil and rain. It followed us for miles, clinging to the inside of the car. Henry broke the silence first. "You think he'll call today?" "I'd bet my life on it," I said, and realized the irony too late. We stopped at a quiet rest area by the river. I pulled out my phone, opened the recorder app, and began speaking softly like a man testifying to himself. "This is Edward Hale, recording evidence regarding an attempted murder involving tampered brakes. Primary suspects, my son, Nathan Hale, and his wife. Clara." Henry watched me, eyes glistening, as I listed every detail, texts, chemicals, the curve at mile 47. When I finished, I saved the file and sent a copy to my lawyer's secure email. It wasn't a confession. It was an insurance policy. The phone buzzed before I could even pocket it. "Nathan." "Dad," he said, his voice too cheerful. "Just checking in." "You get home okay?" "We did," I replied evenly. "Car acted strange for a bit, but a good Samaritan helped us." "Everything's fine now. Glad to hear," he said quickly. "Listen, don't worry about that bag. I'll come tomorrow and pick it up." "Sure thing, son." "Tomorrow's fine." His pause told me he heard the new calm in my tone, but didn't understand it. Then he repeated the same line as before, the one that now felt like a curse. "Drive carefully. Dad, that curve near 47, it can be dangerous." When the call ended, I set the phone down and whispered to myself, "Not as dangerous as you, Nathan." Henry said nothing. He didn't need to. He knew what was coming next wasn't grief anymore. It was purpose. That afternoon, the clouds hung low, the kind that made noon look like evening. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the jar that held the small tube of tainted brake fluid. It looked almost ordinary, like dirty honey, yet it had been chosen to erase me. Henry hovered near the window. "You sure you want to bring Margaret into this?" "She's handled my estate for 20 years, I said. "She'll keep her mouth shut until I tell her to open it." I called her office. When she answered, her tone carried that brisk steadiness I'd always trusted. "Edward Hale, haven't heard from you in a while. What's wrong?" "Let's say I'm rearranging priorities," I said. "I need to revise my will, and I need confidentiality that borders on paranoia." She chuckled softly. "That sounds serious." "It is," I replied. "Meet me at the house in an hour. Bring a recorder and your witness seal." When she arrived, I handed her the folder containing Sam's photos and the list of messages I had transcribed. Her face changed the way a doctor's does when an X-ray tells the truth. "Good Lord, Edward. This isn't just attempted fraud, it's attempted murder. I need them to think it succeeded," I said. She studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right. Walk me through it." We crafted the outline like two generals planning a siege. Step 1, transfer my remaining assets into a charitable trust, everything but the house. Step 2, draft a new will leaving the estate to that same trust. Step 3, schedule a dinner for Nathan and Clara under the pretense of signing the new document, while Henry discreetly records every word. Margaret frowned. "If you're right about them, you'll be provoking dangerous people." "Good," I said. "They'll reveal themselves faster," she sighed. "You always did like teaching lessons the hard way, only when the student insists." Before she left, she placed a small recorder on the table. "Press once to start, once to stop. Keep it close. I'll arrange a police contact I trust. Quiet, no paper trail. When you have their confession, send this to me first." I thanked her. She touched my hand lightly. "Edward, revenge feels like control. Justice is what you actually want. Promise me you'll stop before the two blur." I didn't answer. The truth was already blurred. That evening, Henry and I rehearsed the plan. He'd sit near the hallway door with a backup recorder. I'd act as though nothing had changed. Warm, forgiving, a little weary. Clara thrived on control. Nathan mirrored whatever she wanted. If I gave them comfort, they'd get careless. "Dinner's tomorrow," Henry said. "You ready?" I looked at the empty chair across from me, the one my wife used to fill, and imagined her shaking her head with that half-smile that forgave everything except cowardice. "I've been ready since the bridge," I said. He exhaled. "Then God help us all." "God helps the prepared," I answered. I spent the night writing a letter, one copy to Margaret, one to the police contact she mentioned. Not a confession, not yet. Just a message that began, "If you're reading this, the dinner went wrong." When I sealed the envelopes, I felt an odd calm settle over me. The fear that had lived in my chest since that first text had finally burned itself out. All that remained was focus. Tomorrow, my son and his wife would walk into my house believing they were about to secure their future. Instead, they'd be stepping into a classroom I'd built for them myself, and the lesson was titled Consequences. Margaret returned 2 days later, briefcase in hand, eyes scanning every corner of my living room before she sat. Lawyers read rooms the way detectives read faces. She didn't need me to remind her that the stakes were now counted in heartbeats, not dollars. Everything's drafted, she said. The will, the trust, and the transfer paperwork. I've also made contact with Detective Lewis, the one who handled your neighbor's fraud case last year. He's discreet, I nodded. He'll stay out of sight unless I call. Exactly. She opened the folder, sliding documents across the table. Your entire estate now sits inside a charitable trust. You're listed as deceased pending verification. I can file that flag at the courthouse whenever you give the signal. Henry whistled low. You're really doing this, Ed. I'm not staging theater, I said quietly. I'm collecting truth in real time. Margaret adjusted her glasses. Then we'll need a timeline. When's dinner? Tomorrow, 7 sharp. I looked at the recorder she'd given me. Once they sit down, everything stays live until they leave. She handed me a second device, slimmer, with a blinking red diode. Back up! It streams directly to a cloud folder only I can access. Even if they destroy the first one, we'll still have them. Henry gave a shaky laugh. Feels like we're wiring a sting. Margaret looked him dead in the eye. That's exactly what you're doing. And if you succeed, Detective Lewis will have a full confession before breakfast. After she left, Henry followed me out to the porch. You realize once they confess, there's no taking it back. You'll be turning your own son in. I'm not turning him in, I said. He's already turned himself inside out. I'm just showing the world what's underneath. He didn't argue. Maybe he'd run out of words. Or maybe he saw the calm that had replaced anger in me. Revenge is loud. Justice is whisper quiet. That night I went through the motions of an ordinary man, made tea, sorted mail, watered the geraniums. But underneath every action was precision. I checked the camera hidden in the clock, lens clean, battery full. Tested the microphone embedded under the dining table. Rehearsed the script in my head. Greet them warmly, offer wine, mention the will casually. Watch the cracks appear. At one point I caught my reflection in the window and almost didn't recognize the man looking back. His face lined not by age, but by resolve. For the first time since the bridge, my hands didn't shake. Henry poked his head in. You sure you don't want me at the table? No, you'll be in the hallway. If anything goes wrong, call Margaret first, then Lewis. Got it. He hesitated. What if he apologizes? What if he says he was forced? I looked up from the documents. Then I'll listen. But I won't forget. The next morning, Margaret phoned once more. Final check, she said. Recorder charged, backup streaming, police on standby. All green, I told her. She paused. Edward, you sound almost peaceful. I am, I said. Because whatever happens tonight, the truth stops being mine alone. When the call ended, I sat at the table, surrounded by neat stacks of paper and a lifetime of memories compressed into signatures. I thought about Nathan's first report card, the one he'd hidden behind his back until I promised not to be angry. I'd told him then, truth doesn't hurt, it heals. Funny how lessons age differently in different hearts. By dusk, the table was set. White linen, 2 candles, a roast that filled the house with warmth I didn't feel. The recorder blinked under the napkin like a heartbeat waiting to be betrayed. Henry touched my shoulder. If this works, you'll have your justice. If it doesn't, I said, I'll at least have clarity. He nodded once, went to his post near the hallway, and the house settled into silence, broken only by the ticking of the clock, the same clock that would soon see everything. 7 o'clock was minutes away. The tires on the driveway crunched over gravel, 2 shadows moving past the porch light. I drew a slow breath. Showtime, I whispered. The next day arrived with that deceptive calm that comes before storms. The house smelled of rosemary and roast beef, comfort food I cooked not out of hunger, but out of strategy. Clara always associated rich smells with wealth, with control. She'd walk through the door and think she still owned the stage. Henry moved quietly, checking the tiny recorder under the napkin, then the backup streaming device in the hall. Everything's green, he whispered. Clock cam's got a full charge. Good, I said, adjusting the table. If we're lucky, they'll seat themselves right under the mic. I laid 2 crystal glasses where the candlelight would hit them. The red diode under the cloth flickered once and went still. From the outside, the room looked perfect, domestic, safe, forgettable. From the inside, it was a courtroom disguised as dinner. At 6:50, I took a moment to look at the photo on the mantel. Nathan at 12, face sunburned from a summer ball game, grinning so wide his eyes nearly disappeared. For a heartbeat, I let myself remember that version of him. Then the sound of tires on gravel wiped the picture clean. They arrived on time. Clara led the way, perfume first, smile second. Nathan trailed her, hands shoved into his coat pockets. "Dad," he said, that easy tone sliding into place, "you look good." "Smells incredible in here," I smiled. "It should. I've been saving the best for you." Clara kissed my cheek like we hadn't skipped a heartbeat in months. "We were worried about you on that highway," she said. "That curve, so dangerous." I let the line hang before I nodded. "Yes, dangerous, but we made it back." They followed me to the dining room. The candles burned steady. The wine caught the light. I poured, hands steady. Henry's shadow lingered just beyond the doorway. We ate in fragments, Clara talking about her new consulting venture, Nathan chiming in too quickly. I listened, smiled when expected, never letting my eyes rest too long on either of them. Halfway through the meal, I leaned back, casual. "I met with Margaret Ellis yesterday," I said. "We updated the will. Decided it was time to simplify things." Clara's fork paused mid-air. Nathan looked up sharply. "Oh, what kind of changes?" "Nothing dramatic," I said. "Mostly paperwork, but it's nice to know everything's secure." I saw it then, the flicker behind Clara's eyes, the calculation shifting gears.
She forced a laugh.
"Smart. You can't be too careful at your age." "At any age," I said softly. The air thickened. Outside, the wind scraped against the window screen like fingernails. Nathan took a large gulp of wine, missed his mouth slightly, and dabbed at his chin with the napkin. Clara's gaze darted toward him, sharp as a command. I pushed my plate away and folded my hands. "There's something else," I said. "I found your old satchel, Nathan." He froze. Clara's smile didn't waver, but her knuckles whitened around the stem of her glass. "Oh," Nathan managed. "That? Thought I lost it." "Seems you did," I said, though it didn't stay lost for long. For a moment the only sound was the clock ticking over their heads, steady, patient, recording every second. Clara cleared her throat. "Maybe we should..." "No," I said gently. "Let's stay a while. I think the night still has something to say." Henry's shape shifted in the hallway. The recorder under the napkin blinked once in approval. The first cracks had appeared, and all we had to do now was let gravity do the rest. The silence at the table stretched so long it became another guest. Only the clock kept talking, its hands scraping forward one click at a time. I leaned back, giving them space to speak, but they didn't. They were measuring me, the same way hunters measure wind before they take the shot. Clara broke first, her smile tightening. "You've always been sentimental about old things, Edward." Bags, cars, paperwork. Her tone was sugar laid over steel. "You mustn't worry so much. Life's short," I nodded. "Shorter than some expect," Nathan laughed, but it came out too high, too forced. "Dad, come on. You're making it sound like a eulogy." "Maybe it is," I said lightly, reaching for the bottle. "Another glass?" They both nodded automatically. I poured, the wine catching the candlelight like blood in water. Then I slid the burner phone onto the table between the plates. For a second, neither of them breathed. Nathan's face drained of color. Clara's eyes flicked from the phone to me, assessing, recalculating. The clock ticked louder. "Found this in your bag," I said. "Been reading through the messages. Fascinating conversation between you and a friend. About brake fluid, bridges, and insurance payouts." Clara laughed, a brittle glass breaking sound. "That's ridiculous." "I thought so too," I said. "Until I let my mechanic look at the car. He found the additive. Said it would have eaten through the line before the curve at mile 47. Nathan pushed his chair back a few inches. His breathing grew shallow. "Dad, you have to listen." "I am listening," I said, cutting him off. My voice stayed calm even. "For once, I'm not talking. I'm giving you the floor." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Clara reached over and touched his arm, but her voice turned sharp. "Don't say anything stupid, Nathan. That single line told me everything." She wasn't scared of what I'd found. She was scared of what he might confess. "I'm not the police," I said. "Not yet, But I do deserve an explanation. Clara's smile returned, colder now. You're overreacting. Nathan's been under stress. I handle the bills, the business. Maybe something got mixed up. You've always been dramatic, Edward. I taught English, I said. Drama was part of the job. Nathan buried his face in his hands. His shoulders shook once. Then he whispered, "It was supposed to look like an accident." The words fell into the space between us like stones into water. Clara froze. "Nathan, shut up!" But it was too late. He looked up at me, tears filling his eyes. "I didn't want to do it, Dad. She said the debts were too deep. Said you'd leave everything to me anyway, and if it happened naturally—" He choked on the last word. Clara slammed her glass down so hard the stem snapped. "Enough! You think he's going to forgive you for telling him? He's recording us right now!" Her eyes darted around the room, searching. I'd let her find the clock, the one she'd once complimented as charming and old-fashioned. Her mouth twisted as she realized. "You clever old man," she hissed. "You think this changes anything?" "Everything," I said. "It changes everything." She rose, pacing like a caged animal. "You think the police will care about your little stunt? About a few texts and some brake fluid? You'll ruin your son's life over this?" I looked at Nathan. "He ruined his own the moment he chose your voice over his conscience." He stood abruptly. "I didn't choose. I was drowning, Dad. She said she could fix it, make it all go away. I thought—" His voice cracked. "I thought I could pay it back somehow." Clara turned on him, fury twisting her features. "You pathetic coward. You couldn't even finish the job properly." The words echoed through the house. Henry in the hallway flinched audibly. The recorder under the napkin blinked a steady red, capturing every syllable. I rose slowly, my chair legs scraping against the wood. "There it is," I said. "The truth." Clara's eyes burned holes into me. "You think you've won? You don't know who I owe, Edward. You don't know what comes next." "Maybe not," I said, "but I know what comes for you." Nathan sagged into his chair, defeated. His face collapsed under the weight of guilt. Clara, though, wasn't finished. She lunged across the table, grabbing the burner phone, slamming it against the edge of the chair until it shattered. Pieces scattered across the floor. I didn't move. I simply pointed toward the mantel. The clock's red light blinked once more. Her eyes followed my gesture, then widened. "You streamed it," she whispered. "To the cloud," I said. "And to my lawyer." Clara went still. The fight left her body all at once. Nathan dropped his head into his hands again, sobbing openly now. "Dad, I'm sorry," he kept saying. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." I looked at him, and for the first time in my life I didn't see my son. I saw a stranger wearing his face. Clara spoke again, low, venomous. "You think this is justice? You'll die alone, Edward. He's all you had, and now you've destroyed him." "Then we're even," I said. She laughed once, bitter, hollow, and sat back down, crossing her arms. The room fell silent again, except for the clock ticking and the recorder humming under the table. I stood there, memorizing the picture. My son collapsed, his wife calculating her next move, the dinner untouched. The final family portrait. From the hallway, Henry's voice cracked softly. "Ed, it's all there." "Every word," I nodded. "Good, then we're done." For a long moment no one moved. The smell of candle wax thickened the air. Finally, I said quietly, "Nathan, you'll need to come with me in the morning. Detective Lewis will want your statement." He nodded, broken, defeated. Clara said nothing. I turned off the recorder, the click echoing like a gavel striking wood. The dinner was over. The truth, however, had just been served. Clara sat perfectly still after I switched off the recorder. Her silence was no longer a mask. It was calculation. That kind of stillness only comes from someone who isn't finished yet. Henry stepped into the room, phone already in his hand. "I'm calling Margaret," he said. But before he could, Clara moved. Fast. She snatched the wine bottle and flung it against the wall, shattering it near the clock. The red splatter streaked down like blood. "Nothing's going to that lawyer," she screamed. "You think you can humiliate me, make me your villain? I'll burn it all before I let you." Her words choked off when I raised my own phone, showing her the small blinking dot on the screen. "It's already uploaded," I said. Every word. That stopped her. The fire in her eyes flickered, replaced by a strange kind of admiration. "You're smarter than I gave you credit for." "I taught you both how to think," I said quietly. "You just forgot what thinking costs," Nathan groaned. "Clara, stop. It's over." But she wasn't done. "You weak fool," she hissed. "You think this is over because your father caught a few recordings? You have no idea who's on the other end of those debts." Her words came out like cold wind through broken glass. I believed her. There was something in her tone, something that didn't care about survival anymore. I gestured to Henry to stay back. "Clara, sit down," I said. "No more speeches, no more games." She smiled, a sharp, hopeless thing. "You always wanted control, Edward. Even now you think you're the judge. But we both know control is just another word for fear." Then she did something I didn't expect. She reached for Nathan's hand. For a second I saw the woman she might have been if greed hadn't rotted her from the inside. She whispered, "You couldn't even do it right, could you? You were supposed to make it look clean." Nathan pulled his hand away. "You told me it was temporary, that we'd pay them off." "You lied to me, Clara." "Of course I did," she said. "That's how love works." Her voice cracked on the last word, and for the first time she sounded human. I stepped closer, sliding the phone into my pocket. "Enough," I said. "It's over. The police are already on their way." Her eyes flicked to the doorway. "You called them?" "I didn't have to." I tilted my head toward Henry. He did. She spun toward Henry, and for a heartbeat I thought she might lunge again. But the sound of sirens cut through the night. Faint at first, then rising, echoing off the walls. Nathan slumped in his chair, face in his hands. Clara's expression shifted from fury to something else. Acceptance, maybe, or exhaustion. She sat back down, smoothing her skirt as if we were still just finishing dinner. "You'll regret this," she murmured. "He's still your son." "I know," I said. "That's why I let the camera see who led him here." Blue and red lights strobed through the curtains. Tires crunched on gravel. Doors slammed. When Detective Lewis entered, calm but firm, I felt the tension finally break. He surveyed the room, the shattered glass, the clock, the two faces frozen mid-collapse. "Mr. Hale," he said, "we got the call. Everything's on record." I nodded and handed him the phone. "2 copies, one here, one in the cloud. You'll find everything you need." Lewis gave a small, approving nod, then motioned to the officers behind him. They moved toward Clara first. She didn't resist, just held her chin high as they cuffed her. As they led her past me, she whispered, "You think this feels good now, but wait until you're alone." As they led her past me, she whispered, "You think this feels good now, but wait until you're alone." "I've been alone since the bridge," I said. She didn't reply. Nathan stood when the officers turned to him. He looked at me, eyes hollow. "Dad, please." "I don't want to go." I stepped forward and put a hand on his shoulder. Not a gesture of comfort, just acknowledgement. "You'll go because you must. That's the difference between punishment and consequence." He nodded weakly and they led him away. When the front door closed, the silence that followed was almost merciful. Henry exhaled long and heavy. "It's done," he said, but it didn't feel done. It felt like the pause between thunder and rain. The moment before the world remembers how to breathe. I looked around the room. Broken glass, spilled wine, the faint scent of smoke from the candle guttering on the table. The clock ticked on, loyal as ever. I whispered to it. We survived, and the ticking answered. Steady and sure, the sirens faded into the distance, leaving behind a house that felt too quiet to belong to the living. The candlelight trembled against the cracked wine stains on the wall, and for the first time that night, my legs felt their age. I sank into the nearest chair and let the silence fill me. Detective Lewis stood across the table, flipping through his small notebook. He was a tall man with kind eyes that looked tired of bad endings. "Mr. Hale," he said softly, "I watched the footage. You handled this better than most professionals would have." I gave a tired smile. "Years of grading papers taught me patience." He chuckled once, then grew serious again. "The evidence is solid. Audio, visual, physical samples from the car. We've got Clara on record admitting intent and Nathan acknowledging the plan. The DA won't have much to argue." Henry came in from the hallway, still shaken. You'll charge them both? Lewis nodded. Conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and insurance fraud. Clara's talking already, trying to paint herself as the mastermind. Nathan looks broken. I didn't ask how broken. Some truths don't need to be spoken aloud. Lewis closed his notebook. You should get some rest. You've done your part, Detective, I said quietly. I'm not sure what my part was anymore. Father, teacher, victim, witness. Maybe all of them. He gave me a small, respectful nod. Maybe. But tonight you were alive when you weren't supposed to be. That counts for something. As he left, the officers outside moved like shadows, careful and efficient. The house that once held laughter and dinners now looked like a crime scene, one where the crime had failed, but the damage had landed anyway. Henry put a hand on my shoulder. You okay, brother? I looked at the empty chairs, the shattered bottle, the clock that still ticked faithfully through the wreckage. I don't know, I admitted. I won, didn't I? But it doesn't feel like winning. He sat beside me. Maybe winning just means surviving the night. We stayed there a while, listening to the wind rattle the eaves. Somewhere outside, a dog barked, sharp and distant, life going on, uncaring. After the officers drove away, Margaret arrived. Her coat was damp from the drizzle, and she carried the professionalism of someone who's seen too many endings. She placed a comforting hand on my arm. I saw the footage, Edward. It's over. You did everything right. Right doesn't feel right, I said. She nodded slowly. Justice rarely does. It's cold by design. She helped me gather the papers from the table, the ones we'd signed only days ago. Do you want to finalize the trust transfer now? She asked. I looked at the signature line that bore my name. Edward Hale, deceased, pending verification. For a brief, surreal moment, it made sense. The man who had lived before the bridge was dead. The one sitting here was someone else entirely. Yes, I said finally. Let's finish it. She signed, stamped and sealed, her pen scratching softly like a coda to a song that had gone on too long. When she left, Henry offered to stay the night, but I told him no. I needed the house quiet. After he went, I wandered into the dining room. The candle had burned to nothing, leaving a curl of smoke that smelled faintly of wax and memory. I touched the back of Nathan's chair. The wood was still warm. For the first time, I whispered not to the clock, but to the empty space. I forgive you, son, but I'll never forget what you taught me, that trust without truth is just waiting for gravity. Outside, dawn pressed faint light against the window panes. The night had surrendered, and so finally did I. 6 months later, the house looked different. I'd replaced the dining table. The old one had too many ghosts in its grain, and moved the clock to the living room. It still ticked, soft and steady, like an old friend who'd seen too much but refused to stop keeping time. Spring had arrived. The garden was full again, the lilacs alive, the air smelling of earth and forgiveness. I sat outside with Henry, 2 mugs of tea between us. The sky was bright enough to hurt the eyes, the kind of morning that insists the world goes on. The trial had ended 3 weeks ago. Clara was sentenced to 20 years without parole. Nathan got 12, reduced because he testified and showed remorse. I didn't attend the verdict. I'd already heard everything that mattered the night of the dinner. Henry passed me the newspaper, folded to the headline, "Local couple convicted in foiled murder plot." I scanned the article, then turned the page. They made me sound braver than I felt, I said. Henry smiled faintly. You were brave. You just didn't notice it at the time. I looked out over the garden. Maybe bravery isn't about standing up to evil. Maybe it's just staying standing when good collapses. He nodded. You going to see him? I will, I said.
Not yet.
He's still angry, mostly at himself. And I need to forgive him fully before I walk into that room. Right now, forgiveness is a promise I'm still learning to keep. The wind moved through the lilacs, carrying the faint scent of rain and new beginnings. On the porch rail sat a small envelope, postmarked from the correctional facility. I hadn't opened it. Nathan's handwriting was unmistakable, careful, almost childlike, the same way he wrote me Father's Day cards when he was 10. Henry pointed to it. You going to read it? Not today, I said. Today's for quiet. he let it be. That's the thing about brothers. They know when silence says more than words. After he left, I stayed in the garden, tracing the rim of my teacup. The sun climbed higher, warming my face, softening everything that winter had hardened. I thought about that curve at mile 47. It used to haunt me, the place I nearly died. Now it felt like a mark on a map, where a man turned back and found out what he was made of. When you lose everything you thought you knew, you start seeing clearly. You stop mistaking love for obedience. You stop waiting for apologies that will never come. And if you're lucky, you realize peace isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing what memory you'll live with. I stood, brushed the dust off my hands, and looked at the horizon. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the weight of that night pressing down. Just the lightness of survival and the strange, quiet gratitude that comes when a story finally ends the way it was meant to. The clock inside ticked once, loud enough for me to hear through the open window. I smiled. "I know," I whispered. "We made it."